The grand atrium of the Galactic Council shimmered with the cold light of 1,000 species judgment, and at its center stood Darien Voss, the only human in a chamber built for beings twice his height and 10 times his arrogance. "You want to leave this assembly," intoned the Vornathi speaker, his crystalline mandibles clicking with amusement, "with the discarded daughter of King Threl Vandrak?" A wave of laughter rippled through the gallery, the wet hiss of the Kethrian delegates, the booming guffaws of the Drasmari warlords, the dry rasp of the insectoid council scribes. Darien didn't flinch. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his simple gray uniform a stark contrast to the jeweled robes and chitinous armor surrounding him. "That's correct," he said. The speaker's many eyes narrowed. "She is unwanted, human. Cast off by her own father for the crime of being born without psionic gifts. A king's daughter with no voice, no sight, no bond. Worthless to her bloodline. Worthless to any house that would seek alliance through her. You understand this, yes? You are not negotiating for a prize. You are accepting refuse." "I understand perfectly," Darien said. More laughter. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a Drasmari warlord pounded his fist against the railing in delight. "The little ape thinks he's clever. Perhaps he believes he can ransom her later. Perhaps he thinks Vandrak will pay to be rid of his shame twice." Darien let the laughter run its course. He had learned, in 3 years of dealing with the council, that silence unsettled them more than any retort could. Aliens who had spent millennia perfecting the art of cutting words found something deeply unnerving about a species that simply waited. When the chamber quieted, King Threl Vandrak himself rose from his dais. He was a massive being, plated in iridescent scales the color of dried blood, his crown a crude circlet of fused meteor iron, a symbol of his house's brutal rise to power 3 centuries ago. Beside his throne, chained at the wrist by a ceremonial restraint meant to mark her as property rather than royalty, stood his daughter, Princess Veilora. She did not look up. Her dark hair fell across her face like a curtain she'd learned to hide behind, and her shoulders carried the particular slump of someone who had been told every day of her life that she was a disappointment given flesh. She wore robes of mourning gray, not the vibrant ceremonial colors of her sisters, who sat smug and resplendent in the royal box, their psionic crowns glowing faintly with inherited power. "Human," King Vandrak rumbled, "you submitted a formal request to take my 3rd daughter as a ward under the Interspecies Guardian Accord. I confess I find this curious. What use could your fragile species have for a girl with no gift?" Darien met the king's eyes without hesitation. "I didn't request her because of what she can do for me, your majesty. I requested her because no one else would." The council chamber fell into an odd, uncomfortable hush. "That's not an answer that makes sense to us," the Vornathi speaker said slowly, as if testing each word for hidden traps. "Power is currency. Alliance is currency. A wardship is meant to extract value, political leverage, technological access, marriage prospects. What you describe is..." He searched for the word. "Charity. We do not have a word for taking something that profits you nothing." "We have a word for it," Darien said. "We call it decency." The laughter that had filled the chamber moments before died into murmurs, then into something colder, confusion, maybe even discomfort. The Drasmari warlord who'd mocked him earlier scowled, unsure now whether he was the butt of a joke he didn't understand. King Vandrak's scaled brow furrowed. "You humans are a strange, weak species. You arrived in the galaxy only a century ago, crawling out of your single solar system with primitive ships and softer bodies than a Kethrian infant. You have no psionics. No natural armor. No claws, no venom, no voice to bend minds. And yet you stand here, in the highest seat of galactic judgment, and lecture a king on the worth of his own blood?" "I'm not lecturing you," Darien said evenly. "I'm telling you what I'm willing to do, and you're free to refuse the petition. But understand this, every species in this chamber has spent the last hour mocking a girl who's sitting right there, listening to every word, for a trait she had no control over. None of you have asked her a single question. Not one of you has asked what she wants. Silence. Princess Vealora's head lifted, just slightly. For the first time since the proceedings began, her eyes, a startling violet, unclouded by the artificial sight most of her bloodline wore like a second skin, found Darian's face across the chamber. She's not a defective product to be returned, Darian continued. She's a person. And frankly, gentlemen, the fact that this entire council finds the idea of caring for an unwanted child funny tells me more about the state of galactic civilization than it does about my species' supposed primitiveness. The Vornathi speaker's mandibles clicked rapidly. What passed, among his kind, for genuine surprise? You dare imply that the Galactic Council is less civilized than humanity? I'm not implying it, Darian said. I'm stating it as an observed fact. You've built an empire spanning 11,000 star systems, and you still measure a child's worth by whether she can read minds. We've been in space for 100 years, and the first thing we built after warp drive was an interstellar foster care registry, because somewhere along the way, every culture on Earth, after a few thousand years of brutal trial and error, came to a very simple realization: a society that throws away its weakest members has already failed, no matter how many stars it claims. King Vandrak's claws dug grooves into the arm of his throne. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he let out a low, rasping chuckle, not mockery this time, but something almost rueful. You have teeth, little human. I did not expect that beneath the soft skin. I have a petition, Darian said. That's all I came here with. The king studied him, then looked toward his daughter, really looked, for what might have been the first time in years. Vealora did not look away. She straightened her spine, ever so slightly, the chains at her wrist clinking with emotion. Vealora, the king said, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier theater. Do you wish to go with this human? The chamber held its breath. Even the council scribes stopped their constant scratching of records. Vealora's voice, when it came, was hoarse from disuse, the voice of someone rarely asked to speak, let alone choose. I would rather be unwanted somewhere I'm allowed to exist, she said, than be unwanted here, where I'm expected to disappear. It was the most honest sentence anyone had spoken in that chamber in years, and it landed like a struck bell. King Vandrak was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured, and a guard stepped forward to unlock the ceremonial chain at his daughter's wrist. It fell to the marble floor with a sound far heavier than its weight. The petition is granted, the king said. Take her, human. And should you ever tire of your decency, know that my house will not take her back. I wasn't planning on returning her, Darian said. That's rather the point. He crossed the chamber floor, every alien eye upon him, the laughter of moments ago replaced now by something far more unsettling to the assembled powers of the galaxy, respect, however reluctant. He stopped before Vealora and extended his hand, not as a conqueror claiming property, not as a king granting favor, but simply as one person offering another a door out of a cage. You don't have to take it, he said quietly, so only she could hear. But it's open if you want it. Vealora looked at his hand for a long moment, work-roughened, scarred, entirely unremarkable by the standards of a chamber full of beings who could crush stone with a thought. Then she took it. As they walked together from the grand atrium, the murmurs of the Galactic Council trailing behind them like a tide going out, the Vornathi speaker leaned toward King Vandrak and said, almost to himself, perhaps we were wrong to laugh. The king said nothing. He only watched the doors close behind his daughter, and for the first time in 3 centuries of rule, felt something uncomfortably close to shame. Outside, beneath an alien sky full of unfamiliar stars, Darian Voss walked beside Princess Vealora toward the small, unassuming human shuttle waiting on the landing pad. No fanfare. No escort of soldiers. No royal procession. Just a man and a girl no one else had wanted, walking toward a future neither of them could yet see, but one that, for the first time in Vealora's life, belonged entirely to her.